It's February 4th, 2015. And I was just talking about different forms of damages and why I think the government didn't want me to document things. But and one thing I wanted to clarify, I remembered a little more about the distinguishment of different kinds of damages. Actual damages is not just forms of evidence that are tangible, but excuse me, I'm tired. But it is actually the monetary damage amount. So it's the actual cost. So, for example, counseling, the cost of counseling. How much did counseling cost? And then they would add that up. How much did the medications cost? They'd add that up. How much work did you lose? And therefore, how much money did you lose? And then they would add that up. So actual costs are actually the money amounts of damages. And then general damages includes the idea of evidence of counseling and the idea of pain and suffering and why someone would be in counseling. And then it would factor in, okay, if someone had to take medications, why they would take the medications, the whole pain and suffering concept. And then as I've already explained, the punitive damages is just sort of an extra thing that's added on to that. And so when I was trying to go to some of these places for counseling, at different times in my life, a couple of times, I found that a few times someone who worked for the government didn't want me to be going at all. And I was just completely shut out of any kind of counseling. But right after what happened with Josh Gatoff, I looked into getting counseling for myself because I wanted to talk about it, but privately, and it was on my mind a lot. So I scheduled some counseling, and I did it on my own, I believe. It was voluntarily done. And I went for 3 months, and then and I cried and cried and cried every single time that I went to an appointment. And what was strange about it was that the counselor later claimed that she didn't have records for me there. So it was a real disappointment, because it was at Western Psychological. I believe that was the name of it, Western Psychological. Just off in Portland, but kind of off of the Tigard roads. And her name was Carol Lee, I believe, like Carol and then Lee. At least that's what she told me, and she was Asian, and then she had a supervisor because she was working on her master's or her license through George Fox College. So she was going over there, kind of working on an internship basis or getting her practice out of the way, or practicum, and then had a supervisor. And they asked to videotape the sessions, and I said I didn't feel comfortable with having it videotaped. But when I later wanted to get records from them, I called them to find out, about getting my records, and then they started accusing me of harassing them, and I wasn't harassing them. I thought it was really strange that they were refusing to give me my records from the counseling, and that then they were actually calling me harassing when I was going to them for counseling, not to have another bad mark laid against me. And so I came to realize that whoever was involved in that probably had someone from the government bribing them, or they were somehow government connected as well, because there was no reason, if you fill out a release of information form for your own records, whether it's for counseling or medical or whatever it is, you have a right to receive those. And I wasn't getting my records from counseling. And, I wasn't nuts. Nobody was saying that I needed to go somewhere. And actually she had said that she thought that I had made a very good adjustment and recovery from all the trauma within 3 months. And so, there was no concern that I was a dangerous person or harmed myself, or that there was something wrong with me. I didn't have any kind of diagnosis. There was no big mental disorder of any kind. But, when I was trying to get my records, I couldn't get them. And, it just came down to this whole idea that I began to realize, I think this is sort of a legal thing. I think it's coming down to the idea of someone doesn't want me to have documentation that this happened, and that I actually got counseling for it, and maybe they're afraid that I'm going to go to an attorney or something, or maybe someone knows someone and they're protecting this person. I have a lot of guesses about why they did what they did, but I don't know why. I really don't know. And because it was through Oregon State. It was so I know the state of Oregon has a record of being counseled there. And it's possible that the state of Oregon or someone involved with the state of Oregon also got involved. Because, when so many things had happened to me in the state, and different cops who were state cops and various state employees were involved in some of the harm against me when I was a kid in the area, I think that it potentially caused them some concern that I would be documenting anything bad that happened to me, maybe in Oregon. So, it's possible that the group that got involved with keeping me from my records, which I never received ever, actually, was state-based. And I actually made several requests. I made several attempts to get these records, not just at that time, and I tried harder at that time, but I also tried later, and in other years to get my records and have something done about it. But then later, first they were just saying they couldn't give me my records when I was asking kind of at the time. And then later, when I called and tried to obtain records, they were acting like I'd never been there. So, it was just really disappointing and it's all documented with my name and social security number, because I had to enter that information to have it applied to the Oregon health plan insurance that I was using, because I didn't pay completely out of pocket. I used a form of insurance for it. And, so anyway, the state of Oregon has those records somewhere, and I have never seen them. So that is what happened with that situation. And I was really, even though 3 months had helped a lot with the counseling, it took it was almost a year, like maybe 6 months to 9 months, before I started feeling halfway like normal again, because it really had an impact on me. And so when Robin Bechtold kind of piggybacked on from that rape that I went through, and then added another rape by him to what happened to me, that was very shocking. But instead of crying all the time and having panic attacks, I then went to a different defensive approach. I did cry, and I felt really horrible. I started internalizing it more, and I started feeling more secretive about everything. I started writing everything, like poems and different things in code about my being raped, but I didn't want to talk about it or tell people about it. And then I got really mad. And I got mad enough that I kind of left it alone at first. And then at some point, I just decided, that's it. I've had it. Like, I was actually raped, and I need to report this. Why should they get away with this? And so it was the first time that, when I was a kid, I was constantly trying to report things, and I was always getting blown off by the cops who also raped me themselves. And, then trying to go to police later, I was an adult. I was much older. It was a decade at least later, or more. And, I didn't remember how the response of the police. And by that time, I was older and had been out in the world and knew how the world worked, I thought. And just assumed, when people make reports about rape and different things like that, the cops have to do something about it. Or the prosecuting attorney has to do something about it. They have to take it seriously. And I was in for a shock again, because at the time I didn't realize that some of the people who were right in front of me, who'd been basically like sleeper spies for the U.S., to be in place and in position for people who had reports about rape and things like that. I didn't recognize them as being some of the same individuals who had harmed me themselves when I was younger, like a kid. And, they had then gone on to obtain jobs where they could act as like security guards for all the rapists. They could let certain complaints into the system and prosecute some select cases that they chose, but they were also weeding out any kinds of rape claims that were being brought against people who were either undercover U.S. government people or not undercover U.S. government employees. And unfortunately, I didn't recognize some of the people that I was having to talk to right away. So I just started, giving my reports, and then something happened from there. But before I talk about what happened with those reports, I will describe the method that Robin Bechtold used for the second time that he raped me. And because I am so tired and I've been yawning a lot tonight, I am going to do that tomorrow because I'm just really tired. And I am not sleeping very much because my baby was taken away from me, and because I'm still having to express milk and everything for her, and which I want to do, but it keeps me up. So I am going to talk about Robin's second attempt of raping me, and some of the different government kids who were present and involved when that was being coordinated.